The Barbary Coast was a red light district in old San Francisco. At its heart on Broadway and Pacific, at the waterfront, and on the slopes of Telegraph Hill, were streets clustered with lodging houses, dance halls, groggeries, concert saloons, and taverns. The neighborhood took on its seedy character during the rush of sailors, treasure hunters, and thieves that flocked to California during the gold rush of 1848. At the end of 1849, out of a population between 20 and 25,000, only about 300 were women, and an estimated two-thirds of those were prostitutes. By the early 1850s, besides the dives, where the employee's sole purpose was to separate the wary visitor from his money, other resorts, a trifle more respectable, sprung up like weeds. They were called melodeons and concert halls, and they provided a more elaborate variety of entertainment and often very ambitious musical shows. Here, all male audiences enjoyed coarse and vulgar, but not particularly obscene entertainment, described as allowing them freedom from constrained etiquette. The original Chicken's Ball was an annual celebration held in one of the more prominent establishments on the old Barbary Coast. The establishment, which was judged to have the best act, won the privilege to display the coveted cup until the following year's ball.
In San Francisco, on the Barbary Coast and in the local clubs and restaurants and hotels, entertainers weren't able to see each other perform because they were always performing. So one night during the year, they would have what they called the Chicken's Ball, and it was done late hours, and they would perform for each other, and the different groups would compete for prizes from the different clubs. It was sponsored by the different clubs, and they would all go and perform and get pokes of gold, which usually went to the charities. This was a pretty risque thing when it was done back in the Barbary Coast times. Theatrical people were not even allowed to be in the phone directories in San Francisco or in the city directories because they weren't considered good risks.
I have searched everywhere under the sun to find something written about the original Chicken's Ball, and it's been impossible. But it had to have been written about because they made that movie in 1938 with Clark Gable and Jeanette MacDonald, called San Francisco, and it's all about Blackie needing to win the money for his entry into the Chicken's Ball to get his performers out of jail they had been raided and put in jail. So that's the story of the movie. Here, right under our nose, I find out a couple of days ago that Barbara had great-grandmother who had been in the original Chicken's Ball. A live connection after all this time that we didn't know about. It's just wild.
Well, we're still keeping that part of our family a secret, I guess. Back in the late 1890s and early 1900s, my great-grandparents were theatrical people in vaudeville. They traveled all over the United States and then up into Canada and Alaska for the gold rush up there. We used to get to play with all her costumes and things.
And that must have been wonderful.
Oh yeah, she would bring them to the house and we'd get to try on. We'd open her big trunk, she'd bring it up. She was living in Los Angeles after she retired, and she would bring her trunk anyway, and it would have beads and perfumes and cold cream and all sorts of old theatrical pieces of costuming. And my aunt and I would get to go up to her dressing room and we would just play and all this stuff. We'd take it all out of the big old trunk and put it all on us, and then we'd swab ourselves in cold cream and get ready for the big event.
Isn't that wonderful? The Chicken's Ball was named for the chorus girls who danced on the Barbary Coast in the saloons that came together to compete for the pokes of gold. The chorus girls wore a lot of feathers on their costumes, and they were called chickens because of that. And that's why their show was called the Chicken's Ball. This piece of music, the Chicken's Ball, was written by Al Jolson in 1912.
The thought of recreating a modern version of the Chicken's Ball occurred to me during the years of 1938 to 1939. At that time, San Carlos was a fast-growing community containing a large percentage of commuters. To me, it was quite evident that there was a need to do something to permit people to get to know one another. If San Carlosians, either individually or through their various organizations, were called upon to share in a common enterprise regularly, there would be a fabric of communication and fellowship woven into the community which would perhaps prevent somewhat the breaking up into isolated patterns of living which appear so frequently today in our complex modern American communities. The money-raising potential of the Chickens Ball presented a fine opportunity to aid a most deserving community team, the San Carlos Schools. The fact that I was, at that time, a teacher in search of additional educational supplies and equipment may have, I admit, somewhat influenced my point of view.
The first Chickens Ball in San Carlos was in 1940. It was one night, and after the show they pushed the chairs back and they danced. And the people all came in era costumes as well, all the audience. And then it was such a success that 2 years later they did it again and had it for a couple of nights. And that's how it's grown over the years. For several years they did continue to push the chairs back and dance, but that went away after a while.
Calling this an organization would be a loose expression of terms. What I've learned over whatever that number of years is, there are no grounds for dismissal. There is nothing you can do to get out of this. And actually, it's a lot of fun. It's very interesting, the creative minds, when they start waving their hands and stuff and describing things, and I say, you got to get down to one finger and point at stuff. If you look back through the programs, you're going to see a pretty extensive, eclectic display. 18 years ago, I started doing AutoCAD, so I now have all of this on computer. So when they start waving their arms, I can start drawing in AutoCAD, and I say this.
Well, of course, it's always a challenge to do what's needed to be done for the people that want to put on the ball. One day it'll be electrical, something else it'll be mechanical, something else will have to be constructed. There's always something that has to be changed, that's all. And so that works out pretty well, and that's a challenge.
My mother-in-law has been involved for 30 some odd years.
Wow.
Her daughter, which is my wife, Kelly, has been involved with the show since she was born. So it's been around for a very long time. And I actually, when I first met my wife, the first time I came to the show, you know, it was pretty amazing for me to have this community event because it's really about community, you know, and the sense of community and having the community come together to really put this show together. But we really enjoy it. Our kids love it. They watch the show on video because they can't come here until they're 16. So it's a really wonderful community event.
It's just a really fun, community-spirited event. We enjoy the participation and the making of costumes, and whether you're in the ball or just working behind the scenes or working sewing or doing different things, it was all a lot of fun, and the people enjoyed being together and doing it.
So we'll just start and hope that they're ready. It went actually a lot better than I thought.
Alrighty, here we go. Beautiful. Hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we revisit the Barbary Coast of San Francisco.
Absolutely.